Hello everyone, this is Shokora Zouheikyoku aka chocomint, and welcome to a new game. This time we'll be playing a game called Sacrarium Gelus, which is a submission to the Winter Visual Novel Jam 2022. It's a short game, there's romance I believe, and kind of a lot of warning, but it looks interesting. And it's short, so main point is short. So they say it should be around 30 minutes of playtime per playthrough, depending on the reading speed. So I like short things, so let's go with short things. Let's put in between with a short game. Let's see, there's some content warning. Religious fanaticism, sickness, mentions of MCB in stock not depicted in game, mild intermediate bodily injury, mention not shown visually, body horror, chronic pain, brief mentions of suicide, discussion of death, discussions of existential dread of immortality, possible MC death, possible depictions of severe and irrational paranoia in MC. So that's heavy. So it's a short fantasy romance visual novel about our protagonist with a curse mark on them and being driven out of the village and meeting a god on empty Gelus. Hopefully we will be able to survive after that. Hopefully. Anyway, let's start. What is your first name? So we have a default name over here, so I'm going to go ahead and use that default name. Nickname Cass, Cassadine, and Cass. My pronouns are. So I'm going for she, her, despite using the original name, because I'm a she, her. All humans must die. I just never thought my own village would kill me. The blunt end of a spear stabbed into my upper shoulder. Oh, that's a opening, alright. My balance faltered under the weight of my rolling fever, and I fell to my knees with a harsh thud. The snow and ice swept through my outer layers. The bitter chill of winter bit at me, but it paled in comparison to my fever. The unexpected fall sent a bolt of pain through the soles of all my walls. The incomplete circle felt like a brain under my skin. The bruised veins spreading from it ached with each beat of my frantic heart. Okay, what is that? The mark burned runes onto my skin from the inside. These marks would spread across my body as a painful countdown on my condition. It was a curse mark, a sign of evil influence or divine retribution on the host body. Most brought it upon themselves by dealing with demons. Others were merely unlucky recipients of cursed items or the wrath of a ghost. Some received them as punishment from the gods. I knew I hadn't angered the gods or spoken with devils. That wasn't in my nature, and I thought the others would agree with that. The grim faces that stared back at me proved how wrong the idea was. Wow. The people who I had stood beside for my entire life looked upon me with pity and fear. Not fear for me, fear for them. I was no longer the friendly village baker. I wasn't their lifelong neighbor, friend, or family. I was a threat. The black vein spreading from the mark indicated it was a cursed blade mark. When the central mark was complete, a disease that no natural medicine could cure would spread from me like wildfire. Only holy power could rescue the patient. Only holy power could protect others from the disease. First, I had no such holy power. Our holy priest was a man abandoned by the divine. Wow. That fact has been proven by his inability to construct even simple blessings for newborns. In the past, He was a war hero who used his divine authority to strike down the foes of the Empire. That pass guaranteed him protection from the crown, which meant we had to accept him when he decided to move in. We had to follow his orders. We had to listen to the shrill rains he called sermons, like the one he was screaming at the top of his lungs to convince everyone else to leave me to die. He looked nothing like the golden sages one could find on the walls of the Devon Judge. They were perfect, almost inhuman beings. His robes fit incorrectly on his tiny frame. His lack of hair made it difficult for his tall hat to find purchase. His hands flout about under two long sleeves, and his bloodshot eyes were wide and manic.
Look at how it bravos on the ground to gain your sympathy!
He practically spat at me.
It wears the face of your dear cousin, but I assure you, that thing is no longer her. The minute the mark began to sprout, all of who cousin was, all of who she could be, was destroyed. It has seized her mind and body alike.
That's madness. I winced. My cough-born throat made it difficult for me to match his volume. Luckily for me, there was one person who could overpower him.
Just admit you're an abandoned hack who can't do his job.
Ada's powerful voice pierced through his monologue. In all of her knit layers, she looked like an owl, buff of cat while she waved her cane in the air.
Cass has been one of us since she was a baby. She is a part of this community.
She glared at the older folk in the crowd. None of them could meet her gaze. A few even shuffled their feet like naughty children.
We promised our parents that we would look after her. But what are you doing? Listening to the opinion of the village idiot.
Despite the gravity of the situation, I felt my lip curl up at that. First, old Clerdon gaped at her audacity. It was usually a light shade of pink from exertion, but the pink darkened into an enraged red. Many of the villagers took a step back to avoid his oncoming breath. Edith, on the other hand, kept trying to move forward. Her grandson's stubborn grip on her prevented her from reaching me. If she were just 10 or 20 years younger, she'll be by my side.
Like the words of a gambling whore means anything under the eyes of the gods.
People barked at that. Yes, Edith has spent her youth working in a whorehouse to the south, but she practically raised most of this village. A few people even looked angry about it. Not much they could do with the hunters aiming bows at them. Even half-hearted glares were met with silent warning looks by the hunters. They didn't want to have to kill anyone, but if Orclerden ordered it would be done. Orclerden didn't need divine authority when he had the backing of the crown. No one would risk bringing the Imperial's wrath down upon first time. So they sacrificed one person for that.
Like you know anything, outsider. Don't take it out on her that you don't have the ear of your gods anymore.
I am not abandoned by the gods.
If you weren't, you'll be able to handle this.
Silence!
His bellowing was even more pathetic than usual. He even stamped his foot like a child.
Boy, take your grandmother and lock her in your home. There will be an exorcism tonight after we burn the demon's belongings.
Shocked gasps echoed through the village. Some people shared looks of disbelief. For a moment, I wondered if someone would intervene. Exorcisms were hard on young people. For the elderly like Edith, they could very well be fatal.
At once, hunters! If he does not listen, strike them both down. If anyone has a problem with that, they can get an arrow as well.
The hunters almost looked sick for a moment. They hid their disgust quickly and focused on the task at hand. Stop! Don't! I tried to argue. This time, I managed enough volume to catch some attention. One of the hunters stabbed the blunt end of her spear into my side to silence me. She gave me a desperate look to be quiet.
Don't you dare, boy. If I'm to die today, I'll die with my honor. No, damn you!
At this, Branson dragged her away with the help of a hunter. She argued with each step, but she was too old to fight back. She was the neat exorcism O'Cloden had ordered. 8 other villagers, my only allies it seemed, had also been detained while arguing with him. Edith had just been one of the last to hear about us. I imagined her family tried their best to keep her from learning about it at all, for obvious reasons. My last defender was dragged away. Without Edith, I had no one who could or would speak for me.
It is good that we caught this monster early. Look at how many minds it has polluted with its filth. It preys upon your notions of family and brotherhood, my dear faithful flock. Do not fall for it. It will use your sensitive hearts to spread its blade across the world. It is in its nature to spread and destroy everything.
The priest sneered down at me. The glint of playful victory in his eye made me shudder.
But now it will die alone in the snow, away from healthy bodies it could tint. Once her mud spread passes, we will send word to the marvelous Duke of Kakut.
As though the living god heard his name, the snow began to fall even faster. Hamos would not descend his mountain and save me though. He was a prisoner of the true gods of Gelus, certainly no savior of an Undatalan peasant.
A team of golden sages will ensure that the world is saved by purifying the corpse. For now, all we must do is not harbor its disgusting husk in our midst.
I looked ahead and up at Gelus, the domain and presence of Hamos. It was a stark white mountain, lined with bare pine trees. A ring of black clouds rested near the peak like a crown, and is such with a natural bright blue light. In a day or so, that ring will fall down the mountain as blizzards that would touch all of the Andato duchy for about 2 weeks. It would freeze every last road, city and town. No business would come and go. No one would dare to leave the arcane circles that protected the homes. Anything caught outside arcane protection would be lost under dozens of feet of snow. It was the perfect time to bury a blade-ridden body. No one would find me for months. Please, everyone. I knew I looked pathetic, unable to stand on my own in the snow. I hoped it might spark sympathy in someone, anyone. All of the faces looking back at me were set with sad determination. A few both flinched when I was struck again, but no one called out in my defense. A blade would devastate Forstein. It could kill the nearby villages too. It was pure logic. The one must be sacrificed for the many. The harsh region of Andatal did not allow for bleeding hearts. Any that existed would freeze over eventually due to necessity. As I looked at the people who called my family, I felt forgiven, sad, angry. I'm not going to choose forgiving. No. Angry or sad. So let's choose sad. I felt hot tears well up in my eyes. My shaking hands attempted to brush them away, but drops of hot water cut through the force on my cheeks. No one could look at me. Even the hunters pointedly looked around me rather than at me, tracking me with their peripheral vision. The small, broken sob I couldn't contain made them all flinch. Their determination wavered just a little, but not enough. Priest O'Cloden merely scoffed.
Look at no, mewling like a bee to play on your weak hearts. He did not.
He scowled at their refusal to look up.
Raise your hands. You are not killing anyone. On the contrary, you are saving the world.
Not a single head rose. I heard a few murmurs of prayer for my soul, but that was the only mercy granted to me. While O'Claren ranted on, I struggled to collect myself.
Hunters, drive her out. Do not let Cassidy enter the village. If she draws, kill her on sight. No questions, no second chance. Keep a tight perimeter, two of you. Come with me to burn her belongings. We cannot risk that one of her belongings is also cursed. All but must burn.
No one moved at first. O'Claren stamped his foot and bellowed.
At once!
The crowd reluctantly began to disperse. A few people shot me lingering looks. I could see conflicting emotions flicker across their face. In the end, no one dared to step toward me. Within a few heartbeats, only 2 hunters remained to escort me past the arcane barrier for the village. It took all my strength to haul myself out of the snow. It took all my focus to not immediately fall back down again. My step hands awkwardly shook the snow from my coated pains. I was still freezing cold, but it did feel better. The hunters watched each motion carefully. They seemed particularly tense when my hands dropped near my pockets. They calmed once they realized I was just trying to keep my hands warm. They gave me a few seconds to get my balance. Then, they gestured for me to move forward with sad, tired eyes. The walk was silent beyond our footsteps. I didn't even try to beg. They wouldn't do anything that could get them in trouble. At the edge of the barrier, they stopped. I continued on, leaving the protection of the only home I've ever known. Thus I am joining my parents sooner than they would have liked. Once I had reached the edge of the Enter forest, I paused to think about my options. I had gone to visit Old Man Miller early in the morning, expecting to be sent home with some medicine like usual. I didn't leave home ready for a long journey. No food, no water, no spare clothes, nothing. I had nothing to survive a journey through the region, let alone through Heimer's Breath. Not that there was much of a journey to make. The nearest village was Riverfellow. Riverfellow was just as tiny as Frosty, but it did have a functional priestess. I also had a family there, blood family. They might be willing to help me. The problem was time. By a keen caravan, it would take half a day to round the jagged heap of empty Gelus that separated Frosty and Riverfellow. By healthy foot, it was a 3-day journey. In my condition, I doubted that I could even make it part way through the journey before I collapsed. The long path was certain death, but there was a shortcut. If one cut through the domain of Anti-Gelus, they would find a walking path once made by the modern world barbarians to avoid the long trek around the mountains. It had once been the busiest road in the region. Now that Anti-Gelus was turned into a prison for an immortal being not fond of humans, it saw very little traffic. Deep within the new prison would be an abandoned temple to one of the gods. The living gods usually lived in these temples. Apparently, they called these temples Sacrariums amongst themselves. At least, that was how they called their homes in the fables of old. The Sacrarium was the seat of their power, but not the limit. Hymas, supposedly, controlled every inch of the mountain from the highest tip to a mile around the bottom. His far reach made every inch of Anti-Gelus dangerous. To outsiders, he was just the living god of medicine. To the locals, he was the living god of winter too. We had our fables and our legends. He was known to be cranky and unpleasant. His mood swings caused all bad weather after all. He's also been planned for more than a few thousand deaths. Despite that, Hymas wasn't the main problem. No, the main problem was the twisted creatures that droned on the mountain. All manner of devils skulked in the shadows of dead trees, and they gleefully preyed on any human they came across. The antics ranged from simple human eating to torturous mind games that could last days. A sick, slow-moving target like myself would be irresistible. But if I didn't get caught, I could make it to River Fallow in a day. It really wasn't much of a decision, not if I actually wanted to survive. With Heimos wrath almost ready to roll down the mountain, no one on horseback or in a caravan would pass me on the road. I couldn't rely on luck to rescue me. I needed to take the path I had the most control over. Did I want to survive? The question repeated over and over in my mind. For a moment, despair tempted me with no. Then, I pushed through the pain and realized I wanted to leave. I straightened my back and looked towards the mountains that haunted the dreams of all Andatalan children. It was my only option. I took a step forward and paused to maintain my balance. Then, I took another and another and another. The slow process had me grinding my teeth. My body could barely remain upright. My head pounded with agony, and my muscles screamed in exhaustion despite the journey having just started. I refuse to die. I refuse. Determined and unyielding, I began my journey through the most dangerous area in all of the Empire. I desperately tried to remember all the fables surrounding Gelus and his prisoner. Heimos, as far as we knew, predated the Empire by at least 50 years, so he had around 872 years of stories surrounding him. The mortal man who broke the law of mortality and defied death itself, now a solitary figure on a cursed mountain. Gelus was a dark, dangerous place from the beginning, but its new king made it even worse. Harsh blizzards occur every winter. Even in the spring, the temperature barely rose. His characterization varied depending on the speaker. The judge told stories of brave heroes forced to defeat him with wit to save loved ones. The judge also had many fables about Heimos tricking people into leaving the faith and sending them to the hells. The locals widely whispered old stories of desperate people pleading their case before an icy god. If he deemed the cause worthy, he would grant them mercy. In our fables, Heimos was a raven attacking an abusive husband, a strong one guiding lost children home. Nobody knew which was really true. I had neither magic nor weapons to defend myself. Frankly, I doubted my ability to plead my case due to the splintering pain in my head. All the stories had one common beginning, a greeting. Heroes and desperate alike were expected to introduce themselves upon entering his domain. The desperate often brought gifts of gold and fine fabrics to sweeten the dew. I had no such offerings to give. Will he be insulted that I have nothing to show? Fear and uncertainty tightened around my heart, strangling my dim bravery. It doesn't matter, I still have to try. As I continued forward, the natural sounds of the forest began to fade. Rabbits no longer darted from burrow to burrow. No squirrels scurried up trees with their cheeks full of food they needed to survive. The deer known to trot about were nowhere to be seen. Most concerningly, the air began to slow. Winds began to grind to a halt with each step towards danger. The snow began to fall in eerily perfect patterns. I knew the exact moment my foot crossed the boundary between my word and his. Icy dread and drunken fear raised up my leg from my foot. My entire body shook under its weight. I took a step back and struggled to correct my panicked breathing. I can't! I turned to look back towards Forstein. Despite the distance, I could see a billow of black smoke rising into the raised sky. They really were burning my things. I wrapped my arms around myself and bit back a sob. The sight reminded me rather quickly that I couldn't just go back. As long as I was cursed, I had no home to return to. I turned back towards the bath I had to take and swallowed. You can do this. You can do this. The chant did little to make me feel braver. At the same, I forced myself to cross the barrier. I felt like I had stepped into a void. Absolutely no sound beyond my ragged breathing and shuffling could be heard. The wild, breezy snow began to fall at a gentler pace. No wind stirred the snow on the ground or bent tree branches. Not a single animal could be seen or heard. That icy feelings of dread and fear continued to crawl through me. The alien sensation felt like a parasite hunting for somewhere to go. I stood shivering and scared for a while, forcing myself to grow used to the feeling. It took time for me to find my voice again. No matter what, I had to greet the living God. I didn't want to find out what he did to an unannounced guest. My hands battered through my pockets to try and find something, anything I could offer up. I had a small pocket knife, a wooden bracelet from my parents, and a handful of coins. I doubted he'd want some peasant's dungeon knife, but maybe I could offer him some blood. If he was violent and foul like the church said, he might be satisfied with a blood offering due to the pain it would cause. I didn't want to give up the bracelet. It was all I had left on my parents. The coins were probably the most natural offering. They weren't gold, but silver might do. I stared at the possible offerings in my hands and made my decision. Okay, this is an interesting choice. Which one should I choose though? So, I mean, offering blood is, I don't think that's a good idea. It could be good or it could be bad. The risk is very high. I offer my bracelet. This is one really dear to yourself. Offering that up is not a good thing though. Offering coins is good, but there's always risk in anything, in each choice, and blood, I don't think that's a good idea. So coins or a bracelet. Actually, they just said to introduce yourself. Offering the bracelet actually could be a good thing because it should contain someone's memories of their family and stuff, right? But on the other hand, it's very important to ourselves. So, it could be a very good introduction though. Let's do it with the bracelet. Hymos might take offense to the blood, seeing it as a challenge. The coins might insult him by not being gold. The most I had to offer was the sentimentality attached to my bracelet. Reluctantly, I knelt down and gently placed the wooden base into the snow. I couldn't bring myself to stand up and away from the bracelet yet. Thus, I bowed my head and spoke aloud while on my knees. Hymos. My shoulders tightened at the sudden weight of unseen eyes slamming onto them. Even though I sat alone in the snow, another being was with me in some capacity. I felt that presence move around me, observing me. I am but a sickly traveler seeking to use mortal paths. I promise not to cause trouble for you, and I apologize that this is all I have to offer. I gestured to the battered bracelet. This is the last memory of my parents I have. Not having the best resting against my heart made my chest feel empty. I offer it to you and beg you, please let me pass. The presence tightened around my frame. I watched as small roots rose from the snow, exploring the bracelet. A breath I didn't know I was holding fell out of me when the roots wrapped around it and pulled down. The sound of beaten wings shattered the silence of the area. Dozens of ravens began to swarm my surroundings, some white, some black. It was a surprising display of life in this desolate place. They settled only on a handful of great trees that filled the area. No crowd touched any of the black trees. This made me realize that these trees did not exist outside empty Gelus. The great ones were comparable to pine trees, but the black ones looked like twisted dead things. I knew some stories spoke of a flock of ravens that drowned in empty Gelus, but I've never seen them before. These ravens watched me with an eerie amount of intelligence. They looked back and forth at one another, almost like they were talking. I stayed completely silent. Great. I flinched at the raspy croak. Dangerous. Another raven spoke. Each raven only spoke one word and only spoke a second when everyone else in the flock had spoken.
I must
Says.
leave.
I can't. The ravens fell quiet once more. Then they continued.
Why?
I'm sick.
And
Ah, right. Of course, a living god would fight weird a sickly person would trouble his domain. It didn't make much sense. I should be at home resting, after all. I have a cursed blade mark. My village abandoned me as a result. I felt my eyes fall up again, but I rubbed the tears away. They wouldn't even let me die at home. The ravens continued to watch me in silence. I added another hasty apology. I'm sorry that I'm intruding. I really have no other choice. The ravens listened to me silently before looking back and forth at one another. It was really unnerving to not know what they were thinking.
very.
Well, I almost sighed in silence at that. The ravens took flight once more, leaving me behind. I noticed two lingered for a bit, but I was alone again soon enough. Completely alone, the unseen observer also withdrew. That didn't go terribly. As far as I could tell, I was still human and still sane. I hadn't been struck down in a fit of godly fury. Maybe I can do this after all. I looked around and tried to get myself back on track. I knew vaguely the direction I needed to go, and I didn't want to lose any more time. I thought my walk would remain a lonely one, but that wasn't the case. The ravens would flock around me from time to time. I never felt the weight of invisible eyes again, but the ravens were definitely watching me. When I strayed too close to one of the black trees, a white raven dove down and took me away from it. Just in time too. The tree had leaned forward and bristled with black thorns. It struggled towards me, trying to grab me. What in the hells? I recoiled from the unnatural display.
But
Tree.
away.
The ravens hovering near me repeated the phrase twice more. Despite my curiosity, I didn't ask for clarification. I doubted that they'll be able to explain much. I'll be more careful, thank you. They seemed satisfied with that. I made sure to keep my distance from the black trees moving forward. In a way, the presence of the ravens were comforting. Animals rejected unnatural things, so they could warn me if a devil approached. The younger ones were cute too. Ah! It was difficult to be somber when little birds were hopping around me, trying to play. I noticed a lingering shadow overhead while I walked, and teased one of the little ravens on my shoulder. An older raven, black with green feathers, circled around me a few times. I noticed it was holding something in its mouth. I stopped walking. The little ravens on my shoulder shot away from me. Suspicious. The new bird immediately landed in front of me. It moved its beak around to show me the small blue bed it carried. Then, it hopped towards me, gesturing with its beak for me to hold my hand out. I looked up and saw that this was the only raven nearby at the moment. I hesitated before making a decision. I stepped away from the bird or reached out to take the bed. And that should be a good point to pause in our playthrough today. As we pause at the part where Raven gives us a blue bat, I can see a Raven over here holding a blue bat over here. So it should mean something very important. I wonder what it is. But that information or revelation will be revealed in the next playthrough for now. So it was quite heavy to start off. The start is really rough. Poor casting. I mean, it was unfortunate. We don't know the cause of the curse, and any normal villagers would have made that decision. It's understandable, but it's also very sad. It's understandable for the villagers, to be honest, but the way that priests did and said, that was something else. The really bad impression on me. Like, I felt I could hate him at the first meeting, and his background is not that great either. So I just hope that the other people who got like exorcisms will be fine. Poor Rainy. Anyway, that should be it for our playthrough today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next part of Sacrarium Gelus. Bye bye!